You've heard the saying, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. But how many of you have practiced plenty on a new skill? Maybe you're trying to learn a new instrument or play a new sport or pick up a new game. And you've put in hours, days, months, maybe years, and you've just never hit that level of competency that you'd hoped. The skill never evolved to be at the level you thought it should. Now, it's true that there is some innate ability in different skills. Some people are naturally better at certain things than others. But for many people, that's not the reason why they fail to improve a skill. It's because they don't know how to practice. The key to improving almost any skill is knowing how to practice effectively. Hello everyone, I'm Steve. I'm a software engineer, I'm an amateur musician and videographer. I also do a Twitch stream. There's a link to that down below if you want to stop by. And today we're going to talk about how to become good at any skill. We'll give a few examples of how to implement these tips, and then at the end, I'll give you my trick that I use to make sure that I'm practicing effectively all of the time, no matter what new skill I'm learning. Now, it's true that some people are naturally better at things than others. But many people fail to improve a skill to where they think it should be because they're just not practicing the right way. They fail to make headway because over the hours, days, months, and years of practice, they're just not doing things correctly. They're practicing in a way that doesn't help them. In fact, some people practice in a way that actually becomes detrimental and starts to erode their skill. So why do we practice? It's important to understand why we practice because that's how we get better at it. If you've ever picked up a new skill, say the first time that you learned to hit a baseball with a bat, you know that at the beginning, everything you have to do is a conscious thought that you have to concentrate on. The way your feet are planted, the way your hands and fingers are holding the bat, how you swing, turning your body, your timing. All of these things demand your full attention, and you have to think about what muscle contraction happens here, what movement follows this one, what sequence of events do you do. But then as an experienced player, you don't have to think about this. You could be swinging a baseball bat and hitting the ball while thinking of what you had for dinner the last night. Why is that? It's because, as humans, when we intentionally or unintentionally repeat a very specific sequence of movements, a series of muscle contractions, then our brain starts to take those conscious thoughts and make it into an unconscious habit, where we don't have to think about it. The more you practice a specific series of movements, the more your brain turns it into an unconscious habit that becomes easier to pull out and becomes harder to be broken. So this is the purpose of practice. You intentionally repeat a certain behavior, a certain sequence of movements over and over until your brain makes them into a habit. You may have heard the term muscle memory. The more you practice the same sequence of events, the same notes in a song, the same rhythm and timing and hand positioning while shooting a basketball, the more innate and unconscious and easy that skill becomes. So why is this important to know? It's important to know because we have to understand the way the brain learns so that we can help it learn correctly. The way the brain learns is whatever actions or movements you repeat, it will learn. It doesn't matter if you want your body to remember those things and make them a habit or you don't. Whether you're doing things the correct way, shooting the ball the correct way, playing a song the correct way, or you're making mistakes, whatever you repeat, your brain will learn. So that's the important thing, because that tells us that we have to make sure not to teach our brain and body the wrong way of doing things. If we repeat mistakes, our brain will learn those mistakes. Take shooting a basketball, for instance. You go up to the free throw line and you shoot a bunch of free throws and you make most of them. What happens when you come back the next day and you try to shoot free throws? You probably make them, because your body has taken the movements that you've repeated and it's turned them into an unconscious habit. Now say you're at the free throw line and you missed most of your shots because your hand positioning is off. Well, what happens when you come back the next day and try to shoot free throws? You probably miss. Because even though you didn't want to teach your brain and your body the wrong way of doing things, even though this was the wrong hand positioning, your body learns it just the same because that's the movement that you repeated. So this starts to show us what the key to practice is. The key to practice is being at a difficulty level where we are challenging ourselves, but where we're not at the point where we're making mistakes that could become reinforced. If you're shooting the ball over and over and you keep missing, don't keep going. You're not going to find your way through until you start making them. All you're doing is reinforcing bad habits, and your body is going to want to do those bad habits, that bad positioning, that bad timing every time after that, and it's going to become harder and harder to break. So you have to start to become aware of what difficulty you are at when you're practicing. If something is too difficult to the point where you're starting to make mistakes, you have to reduce difficulty, reduce complexity until you're at a point where it's challenging. You're making mistakes once in a while, but you're not making mistakes often. You're not giving your body a chance to reinforce bad habits. If you find yourself missing as many shots as you take when you're shooting the three-pointer, reduce difficulty. Take a few steps in. Slow things down. Stop shooting off the dribble if you are. It does not pay to keep making those mistakes. Always be practicing at a difficulty level where you're doing things the right way most of the time. Let's take another example. You're learning a song with piano. If you play a song and you make a mistake in the same place in the middle of the song every time, if you keep practicing that song that way, you're just reinforcing that mistake. You're not going to get to a point where it finally clicks and you get it right. You're going to keep reinforcing that mistake, and every time you play it wrong, it actually makes it more likely that you'll play it wrong the next time too. You have to be at a level of difficulty where you're playing those notes right. If you have to slow it down, if you have to only play half the song, or just the middle of the song, or only play with the right hand, then do that. Reduce the difficulty until you are playing things correctly, until you're not making those mistakes over and over. Teach your body to do things right. Teach it the right sequence of movements, what specific notes it needs to hit and when. Now, while you don't want your practice to be so difficult that you're making mistakes and reinforcing bad habits, you also don't want it to be so easy that you're never making mistakes. You could stand right in front of the basket and shoot it and make it every single time, and you might get really good at making shots right next to the basket, but you're not going to really improve your free throw or your three-pointer. Don't sit at a place that's too easy. You should be pushing out of your comfort zone, but just enough so that you make a mistake here or there. Not too many, but you need to be making a few to show that you're actually pushing yourself into a new difficulty level. This is the key. You need to be practicing in the correct difficulty level all of the time that you're practicing. Not too easy and not too difficult. And you have to be constantly aware of where you're at. If you find yourself never making mistakes, you need to increase that difficulty. If you find yourself starting to make mistakes, don't keep going. Don't just plow through. Slow things down, reduce difficulty until you can get back to a place where you're doing things right, even if it's slowly, most of the time. So here's my trick, if you could call it that, of making sure that I'm practicing effectively whatever I practice. And it's called the Rule of 6. And you can use this for a sport, for shooting a basket, for learning an instrument, for playing a specific song, playing a specific measure, learning a new computer game. And the rule is, you need to be able to perform a specific action, whether it's playing 3 measures of a song, or the whole song, or shooting the basketball, or practicing your golf swing. You need to be able to do it correctly 6 times in a row before you increase difficulty. So say you're shooting free throws. You can make 6 in a row, great. Take a few steps back, increase the difficulty. If you can then make 6 in a row again, continue increasing difficulty. Maybe you go off the dribble this time. Now, let's say you're only making 4 or 5 in a row. That's great. That is your sweet spot. That's where you want to be practicing. That's where you want to be concentrating on each shot until you can get 6 in a row again. Now, if you get to a point where you're not even making 4 in a row, maybe you're back at the 3-point line and you're only making half of them. Okay, reduce the difficulty. Step in a few times until you're back to making 4 or 5 out of 6. There, you found your sweet spot again. Stay there, concentrate, and practice at that difficulty level. If you then get to a point where you've made 6 in a row again, increase difficulty. Now, there's nothing special about the number 6. You could use 5, you could use 7. But the point is, You need to have a way to be aware of how difficult something is for you, and you need to be able to increase or decrease the difficulty of what you're doing to best learn that skill at that time. When you're constantly pushing yourself just out of your comfort zone, but not reinforcing bad habits by starting to make mistakes and getting too difficult, you'll find that you're able to learn skills a lot better. You're going to spend a lot more time learning things the right way, and you'll spend a lot less time unlearning bad habits that have been made by constantly reinforcing mistakes. So if you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. I can answer them. Or stop into my Twitch stream, we can talk. If you liked the video, or got something out of it, or have a success story to share, please hit the like button or subscribe or leave me a comment below as well. I'm Steve. See you later.